position. Annie Power at the last race down. Annie Power has gone but in front of the last length. Melanie Light by the first time. They're running up towards the finish, and he's mistaken the winning post. He's mistaken the winning post completely. Roger Lockwood and Hoyt.
From Archibald, Hardy Eustace defends his title. From Archibald, he's flattened out his level. Then he's followed up right by. He's beginning to power. He's drifting off the true line. He's fire. And this was coming home. Smiles are going to win his fourth Betfair Chase. And Cordo Star is still the king. Cordo Star wins.
All right, welcome guys to another episode of Tailed Off, episode number 2. So as a reminder, this is the No Holds Barred podcast that dives headfirst into the wonderfully weird world of horse racing. For the curious newbies like me or those looking to sharpen their skills, we've got you covered and guiding you through it all. So guys, we're back. Episode number 2. Didn't think that would happen.
Who did?
Live to fight another day, mate.
That's what we like. That's what we like. Today, guys, we're covering a few things. So we'll start off with a quick review of the weekend. As El said, he was at Windsor and we had a few wins this weekend, which was nice. Our trainers in form review. So if you remember last week, we gave a few recommendations on our trainers in form and why it's important. So we'll have a little look back how successful those were. And then what we'll do is we'll cover a deep dive today. We've already had a few questions, so thanks guys for all your questions. It's great to hear from you. So we'll cover a deep dive on how to read a race card. And for me, it's probably the most complex piece of paper I ever see. So I have no idea what I'm looking at. So it'd be great to go into a bit of detail today. And then we'll have a little preview of Cheltenham. So Cheltenham is just around the corner, which I know everyone's buzzing about. So yeah, looking forward to it, guys. So let's dive straight into it. Weekend racing. Before we get into the results, how did we get on with our trainers in form recommendation?
Well, I think there was one standout, which was pretty good. Good old Chicago Storm, Daisy Hitchkins, 33 to 1. It was advised on, I think it was Wednesday last week, and got us off to a pretty good start. And
That's what we like. We're up already.
Currently in profit, so long may that continue.
So yeah, just explain a little bit then. So you started to do a bit of a tracker of you, El, in terms of profit and loss, which is quite interesting. So maybe just spend a couple of seconds talking about that.
Yeah, well, I think any tipster worth their weight in gold, Tony Calvin excluded, will always keep a P&L of their selections. I say that.
Is that a fun comment you've made there?
Because he was keeping a P&L till he was over 30 quid down, and then decided to stop keeping it. So
only do a P&L if you're in profit.
Yeah, exactly. If that's the industry standard, we'll stop it. But no, it's only fair that when we're putting up selections that we keep a track of how they've been getting on. So I'll always say what the price is when it's been gone up, because obviously the prices can come down, and then the industry standard is to track it to a 1 point win or each way, unless advised otherwise. So that particular win we had, annoyingly, I did it to half a point because I wasn't, fully sure it was the one. So we didn't get all the maximum profit we could have done. But yeah, that's how we'll keep track, and then we'll see over the course of a month, 2 weeks, etc., how we're getting on.
So you only do half point and a point basically, yeah? Which could be £1 or 50p. Basically.
Yeah. So the point system, very simply, is just whatever your kind of normal state.
I see Duncan laughing there, but that's an important point.
I'll be honest, guys. I know we're recording this, but my door has just fallen open. Rosie's just coming like a giggling as she went to shut it, so I was trying to hold the door shut. So sorry, I was miles away.
For the benefit of the tape, it is very cold, and Duncan's wife has gone out for a walk, and she looks like an Eskimo.
She's guy on the BBC News when he's been interviewed and the kid just starts coming in on the ground. He's trying to shut the door behind him.
Literally like trying to lean across the door to keep it closed. It didn't work.
That's funny.
So basically, the reason why you do points is because my main stake might be a £5 win, £5 each way.
Yeah.
To some big Billy Bollocks, it might be 100 or more. Some people, like yourself, Matt, might be more like 50p or a quid. So if 1 is the baseline, if I said 2, it's double that, and so on and so forth, or half will be half that. So it's just a flat way of keeping it relative.
Right, let's get into the races then. So, weekend, how did it go? Duncan, we'll start with you. So, Friday, what happened?
Utter tripe for me throughout the whole weekend, I think.
It's a tripe.
But we had a look. I don't think I really had a bet on the Friday. I know that the Lightning Novice is the one that we kind of spoke about, and we weren't sure in terms of the entries at that stage who was going to go, because owners Fergie and co had 2 in the race with Colwell Potter and Le Dessous. As it turned out, I think they pulled Load of Sue out and they left Caldwell Potter in there. I think we weren't exactly speaking nicely necessarily about the horse, but didn't really think it had that much ability, and the price was pretty crap on it. So we kind of sidestepped it. And as it turned out, Gidley Park did him over, and I think it was the outsider of the field. And I mean, I don't want to take all the thunder for it, but afterwards, I think me and Elle were messaging each other, and Nichols then came out afterwards and said that he'd spoken to Harry after he got off the horse, and he's quoted as saying, "Nice horse, not a champion." Which was entertaining considering the horse is worth about 700 grand. So good luck telling your owners that one, that the money you've just spent is basically a load of shit and gone down the drain.
Cheers for that.
He broke the record.
What about you, El?
He broke the record at 740,000 guineas, I should say, for a horse in training. So Fergie and his mates have all piled in on that. It's supposed to be best thing since sliced bread. Then it has a couple of runs, doesn't perform that well. Nichols comes back from Barbados with an absolute glowing tan, swanning into the paddock going, "Yeah, he's not that good." So you wouldn't be feeling too happy with that, would you?
No, not ideal.
But we should mention the winner, Gidley Park.
Yeah.
He was a Grade 2 winner over hurdles, and he had an issue with his heart on his first start, so clearly underperformed. But he ran that well, and he won it quite nicely from the front. So he could be one to keep an eye on for Cheltenham from that race.
I quite liked what what's his name, the trainer, said afterwards as well. Just about the whole piece about bringing him back and the good job that the jockey did the whole time. So it was nice to see that win.
Nice. Okay, so that was Friday. So what about Ascot then? Saturday. What happened?
Well, the big race of the day, everyone was kind of anticipating was the Clarence House Chase, the Grade 1 at Ascot, over 2 miles. It's a race that Henderson and Willie have gone head to head in a few times, and so it proved again with John Bond clashing with Energumene. John Bond was kind of, if you like, this season's horse, unbeaten and kind of putting up great performances. Energumene was, if you like, last season's horse. He'd been off for a couple of years, and he won on his reappearance, but at the age of 11 you always thought, has he still got it in the locker?
11, wow.
Yeah, so they can still win at that age, but once you get past 10 you're starting to go downhill really at the top level. But he won quite nicely on his reappearance. So in the podcast last week I thought he might still have another good run in him, but John Bond just absolutely put him in his place. He pretty much made all from the flag fall, and I think John Bond in his earlier days was so exuberant that if you tried to make the run in with him, he would have just run out of gas and probably not got home. And often Nico was fighting with him the whole way round, but on Saturday he just let him go. He got tight to a couple of fences, but he jumped in the main really well and just put the pressure on the whole time, and gained lengths at fences, and Energumene just couldn't live with it, and ultimately came down to the last. Nico asking for a big one, absolutely winged it in front of the packed grandstand at Ascot, and I think that was a really good performance. And actually, if you look at some of the figures, I know we'll flash up the Racing Post ratings, but Racing Post have him at 177, which is the highest he's ever achieved, so career best performance. And the BHA and Timeform have gone with similarly high marks, so that is believed to be his best ever performance. Now you could argue, well, Energumene's on the downgrade, so is that form really worth as good as it looks? But you can't take too much away from John Bond. He's put down a really strong case now for Cheltenham. I think he's in as short as 5-4, 11-10 for the Champion Chase. The only slight niggle I'd have is he hasn't quite gone and done it at the festival for various reasons. It'll always be in the back of your mind, but he's the clubhouse leader, as I say, at this stage in this division, and he probably will go and win in March.
2 quick questions. Give me the short version. Grading. You said Grade 1.
Yeah, so the way that we separate the class of race in Britain and most kind of jump racing countries like Ireland and France is they'll have Class 1s at the top, but within Class 1 there are other brackets. So for a Class 1 race you have then the different grades. So Class 1, Grade 1 is the absolute top, so that's the most premium, prestigious races. Tend to only be a handful of them a year, and most of them are run at like Cheltenham and Aintree, basically at the big end of season targets. You will have then Grade 2s and Grade 3s, but you don't have so many of those. Yeah. And then you go down from Class 1 to Class 2, 3, 4, and it can even go down to as low as 6.
To put it in layman's terms, then, if we're speaking to like people who aren't used to this and they're more football fans, you're talking like Grade 1s are like your World Cup matches or your Champions League matches, and then you're kind of working down to like Europa League stuff, and then into like Prem, all the way down to like Conference League kind of thing when you're talking about like Class 5s and stuff.
Farmers League.
Makes sense.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you also mentioned the scoring of the
Yeah.
horse itself, Jean Bon. So you got 150 to 180, that will flash up now for those that are watching on YouTube. But what does that mean? So something's 174. What does that mean?
Yeah, so basically it's just called a rating. So it's a way of quantifying how good a horse is in numbers, and
Yeah.
they're supposed to be objective, but there probably is quite a bit of subjectivity in there. What doesn't help is you probably have three main ratings to look at. You have what's called the official rating, which is the BHA, so that's the British Horse Racing Authority. They're the regulator of the sport.
Covered
And
that
they-
last week. Everyone should know that now.
Get the klaxon out. And the reason why they do a rating is because if a horse was to run in a handicap, and we'll do that in a separate deep dive, it determines what weight they carry relative to
Yeah.
the horses. So that's the most important because that is the official one. But then Racing Post, which is the one we'll have on the screen, they do their own. So they'll have their own set of handicappers who rate the performances. And then Timeform, you might have heard of, they're quite a famous rating agency, and they'll do their own version. But it's basically trying to
Useful.
quantify how good was that performance. Because
Yeah.
if you look with your naked eye, you might be blown away, but the time might be slow. It might have beaten inferior horses. So actually, it helps us to work out where it sits in the rest of its horse's career.
It's a good leveler, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. All right, Duncan. So what else happened on Saturday then? I think we've got a few others that came in.
Yeah, we had, I think, the Peter Marsh, which is the 230 that we mentioned, the Grade 3 up at Haydock. I think Elle and I were both pretty sweet on Royal Pagaille because he went over course and distance earlier on this season. I think it was just before Christmas when he took on Dan Skelton's runner, Grey Dawning, and put him to the sword towards the end of the race, but he got up and won. He loved the course. We were all, really happy with everything that was going for that. 5-2, took that ahead of the day. He promptly then drifted out to 3-1 before the off, and I think he was pulled up coming up to the home turn, which was pretty. You never like to see a horse being pulled up before, so they're not even in the mix for it towards the end. So it's pretty disappointing. He didn't jump well throughout the entire race. Just did not seem to be going the gallop at all, which is unusual. But his jumping, I think, really, really let him down. Throughout the whole
He made
course.
an absolute clanger at 7 out as well. Didn't he?
Yeah, exactly. Yes, that's absolutely right. Yeah,
not
I mean, he nearly lost Charlie Deutsch out the side door, I think, at one point when he came over. So it really just, I think you could potentially draw a line through it as like just a bad performance. But yeah, pretty gutting when you've got I don't think he was favourite, but he, a pretty fancied horse, and he goes and does
Well,
that.
he was favourite because I was going to
was
mention.
actually favourite.
One point I was going to raise was that Venetia had a few turned over at the weekend. I think she had 5 favourites beaten over Saturday and Sunday, and maybe some of her horses are slightly under the weather. But then she's had 2 winners today, so
Okay, fine.
Well, it's the
But-
time, isn't it, of the year where they have the flu jab, isn't it? Like in
yeah,
January.
exactly.
Which is
Okay.
one of the things they say is, I don't know if it's a myth or an actual thing, but they normally say like the horses get their flu jabs in January.
It's not a myth. Yeah,
Is that
definitely-
way? If it's an actual thing. I know a lot has been said, like Nichols in the past has always said about flu jabs and things like that.
So it affects them like it does us, in terms of
yeah,
jabs
exactly.
and,
Get the sniffles.
yeah,
Don't
get
fancy
the
running
sniffles.
particularly brilliantly well, so they're not going to run up to standard. So it could be down to that.
So, Elle, anything else on the weekend then, Saturday or Sunday?
Yeah, well, I think worth just touching on Sunday was at Windsor races for the final day of the Berkshire Windsor
Windsor,
Million.
your playground.
Yeah, it was honestly a great experience. There was a lot of fanfare. They had the choir there, they had bands there, they had various stalls and stuff. There was a massive crowd, over 4,000 at Windsor. Is a pretty decent crowd. Really good atmosphere. It was absolutely freezing, and I was a bit worried it was going to be called off. But credit to the ground staff, they fleeced most of the track, unlike Sandown did earlier in the year. And they managed to avoid the worst of the frost, and it was a great day. And obviously the feature race was what is not a grade 2, but it's a class 2, but bound to be a grade 2 at some point, because I think there was 165 grand in the pot, which is a pretty decent pot for that level. And Protectorat, as we did touch on our social channel, so worth keeping an eye on Insta, because that's where we'll start posting previews and content ahead of the weekend racing. Dan Skelton was absolutely bullish. He'd said he'd had a couple of runs just to cherry him up. This was the target, and you just knew what was coming as soon as the flag dropped. Harry Skelton set out, and he was 5-10 lengths clear after a few fences, and he didn't stop. He just went further and further clear. Jello tried to get close to him. That was the one I fancied, another Venetia Williams horse that underperformed. And I think it was one of those where that's the beauty of top level horse racing. You have a bet, and sometimes if you're wrong, you can still appreciate a good winner, and that's what Protectorate was. And it came home to an absolute rapturous reception, and it was a really good performance.
I was panicked when I think when he was going clear about 2 out, and Harry was kind of starting to give him the beans, and I was kind of shouting at the TV like, "Stop giving him the beans! You don't have to." Because all I could think of was going back to Haydock a few years ago.
Oh yeah,
he did the same with what was the name of the horse?
Chamblou. That was a Wesley.
Chamblou, when he's booted him into it, and then he's fallen, and all I could just see was that happening all over again. And thankfully, it didn't. So well done, Harry. We'll give him some credit. He did well. It was fantastic. It was so good.
I managed to get a video of that come down to the last, so
nice.
On the Instagram.
We should post that.
As well as our cheeky.
Well, for those not following us, do follow us on Instagram and X. At some point, we have been banned because of the terrible content that we're posting, unfortunately, by Elon. But we will be back. But yeah, it's definitely worth looking at the Instagram video and the interview that you got, El.
Do you think if I do a salute, Elon will let us back?
I think so.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the best way to do it, yeah. Or maybe just post "I love Donald Trump" on there, and then you'll be fine. We're getting political now. Let's not do that.
Hashtag tell Donald Trump.
Yeah.
It's probably. Do we call out the other question we had before we move on to the other stuff? Do you want to do that now?
It's worth flagging that we've had a very nice question. One of the first questions, quite a I don't know, shall we say, challenging one. What was the question you got, El?
Well, I mean, it was like, what would I like for Christmas, basically, and it was. Thanks for the tip, 33-1. You're welcome, by the way. While you're there, would you boys knock us together a lucky 63, which is 6 individual horses for the Cheltenham Festival, which is the hardest race meeting in the year to sort of get winners. And, oh, by the way, all of the odds of the horses have to be over 10-1.
No
so
pressure.
if you hurry up with that, lads, we'll be grateful. So,
As you said earlier, if you could do that, you wouldn't be sitting here talking to us.
we'll
You've been winning the lottery.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So thanks for that. Keep them coming.
Yeah.
Right, is it worth mentioning Fakenham tractors? Because
Yeah.
this picture you posted was quality.
Well, you've probably seen the various kind of, I wouldn't call them riots, but what do we call them? Protests and parades in and around central London. Jeremy Clarkson, shout out Clarkson Farm, was a feature in one of those recently. So they are obviously out and about trying to make a bit of a fuss about inheritance tax. So Fakenham came up with a kind of a quirky idea. They would let any local farmers in for free for the day if they brought along their big Massey Fergusons and Lamborghini tractors, parked them all along the home straight because they had ITV there for basically like the only day of the year they get the ITV cameras. And obviously, as the horses are coming past the winning post, all you'll see is about 1 million tractors. So I thought fair play to them. It looked a bit weird, but
I mean, I think it looked pretty cool, to be honest. That shot is epic. But yeah, why not, get yourself on TV. Right, news. Before we get onto Stewards' Enquiry, let's have a quick look at news. Cheltenham entries are in. I am very excited to be going to my first Cheltenham Festival. Booked today, signed off,
Jerry.
approved by the boss, my wife. And going, so yeah, I'm buzzing for it. So Duncan, what we saying then? You got a few written down for Cheltenham entries, few interests.
Yeah, I'll leave. I think the first few on here for Al. But one of the things I kind of noticed. Well, I've backed one actually weirdly off the back of. We mentioned it, I think, in last week's pod. The juvenile hurdle that was at Ascot, the first race, where they had Lalamba, which was the Donnelly horse that was trained by Nicky Henderson, which went into favouritism for the JCB Triumph, which is the first race on Friday at the Cheltenham Festival. And it was already into favourite before the race had even gone off at Ascot on Saturday. And he duly hosed in pretty comfortably. Looked very professional, looked very, very good. Again, shortened in price to about 6-4, which is ridiculous. Nice. But it's actually the second place horse that I've gone with, which is Mondo, I think it's called, for Gary Moore. The horse was backed very, very well on Saturday, and it just from the start of the race, the horse was so keen, pulling basically pull the arms off the jockey, and just I think it just ran out of puff towards kind of like part way down the straight, but then kept on at the end. And I just thought, what's the price? And it's 25-1. That's 25-1 for the JCB Triumph. So I just thought I'll have a little punt on that at 25. Better than a 6 to 4
You might
shot.
be
in my
convincing
opinion.
me here, mate.
So, well, I was going to say, if your
You
mate
moved
is
up all the
listening,
25s.
yeah, I was
It's
going to say
gone.
for the lucky 63, chuck that one in your lucky 63.
Yeah.
There's one.
your
You've
first
got one.
There's
We
your
just
one.
need 5 more now, lads. Nothing
Well, no,
more.
I think that counts as 2. It's 25 to 1, so it's fine.
Yeah, that'll do. We'll take it. So yeah, that's my opening anti-post on that.
Nice. And El, what are you saying?
Yeah, so basically the way the Cheltenham entries come out, they come out kind of from the turn of the year. Each week we'll get another few sets of races, and then you just have a little look and see if there's any kind of surprises. A lot of people were suggesting that Corbett's Cross, who won the National Hunt Chase at one of the races at the festival last season.
Corbett's Cross. Yep.
Yeah, owned by the legend JP McManus. He was basically in the process of going to win the Albert Bartlett, which is a novice hurdle over 3 miles. They expected him to be in the Stayers hurdle, which is over 3 miles as well, over hurdles, and he wasn't entered. And Emmett Mullins was on a podcast recently, absolutely so sweet on him for the Gold Cup, and basically said kind of not forget what he's done this year, but it's all about the Gold Cup. So that was a real strong vote of confidence for him. He goes to the Red Mills Chase at Goran next on the 15th of February. But a slight sad bit of news really is that another one of his stable stars, Noble Yates, who actually won the Cleve Hurdle last year, that's the race on this Saturday, on Trials Day, and of course was the famous Grand National winner of 2022 when the amateur jockey, Stan Whaley-Cohen, who is a professional dentist and managed to win the greatest race
That's
of all,
an amazing story.
which was an incredible story.
Yeah.
The horse was supposed to run at Christmas and sadly sort of didn't fancy it, didn't want to go into the parade ring, and they kind of took him back home, had a look at him, and he's seemingly sort of looking like he's had enough of the game for one day. So they've sent him back to the owners, and they'll look after him, obviously give him the best care, but he might not ever come back as a racehorse, which would be a shame because he's a grand old servant. And then a couple of other notes. Champion Hurdle entries are out. We didn't expect a big field, but it's the lowest ever entries for that race. Only 16 entered, and there's probably a few you could say already aren't going to run. But one absolute left field, which I never thought I'd be talking about for jumps racing. There's a horse from Japan that's been entered.
Hello.
And he'd only be the second horse ever from Japan to run at Cheltenham, and the first for 60 years. Japan, for those who don't know, is a really popular horse racing nation, but mainly on the flat. They do have a few jumps, but Ruby Walsh managed to win a race over there once, way back in the day, but they wouldn't be renowned for their jumpers, and they certainly wouldn't have hardly any come over to this part of the world. So their intention is to run. It might not be in the Champion Hurdle. They are looking at handicaps as well, but he's an 8-year-old entire, which means he's still got the old kahunas.
The kahunas, the old balls.
So it'll be a fascinating runner at Cheltenham. A bit of the Far East for that.
Yeah, okay, nice. Maybe we should do a future podcast on like countries.
Should we go over for a trip?
Well, we probably should. If anyone wants to sponsor the podcast for a trip to Japan to do a deep dive into Japanese racing, then let us know down below.
The only other thing I was going to add to it, again, on kind of the reduction in entries, was the Brown Advisory, which they came out today, and I think that's over 2.5 miles.
No, that's the 3 mile race.
That's the 3 miler that you've already mentioned. Sorry. Okay. Again, the amount of entries for that is dipped down to its lowest. I think it's 30. It said 32, but when I checked earlier on, it was 31 entries, and that's down from 38 last year and 34 the year before.
Still big fields, aren't they?
Is it a worry? Is it not? Obviously, you're not really going to get 34 or 31 that are going to go to post anyway, but you don't want it to cut up too much. There's plenty of time in between now and then. And then the only other one, I keep banging on about, it's like I'm sponsoring JCB Triumph or something like that. It's ridiculous. Hendo has got another, he just seems to be targeting this race, it seems. He's got another horse that's running for Lady Bamford. So it was a purchase, 1.4 million euros. So this is the most expensive jumps horse in training now.
Wow.
We spoke about Coldwell Potter earlier on being 740 grand. This is double the price.
1.4
and it's called Palladium. So that's running, starting its hurdling career in Huntingdon on Thursday in the 12:47. I imagine it will be no price whatsoever, but it's currently again tens for the JCB Triumph. So Hendo has got a ridiculous hand in that if he sends that there. And I think, El, you mentioned before we started this that Lady Bamford is somehow intermixed with JCB, or she owns JCB.
Well, that's the family business.
Business. So call me a cynic, but when a sponsor of the race has a horse in the race, it can only mean one thing,
That's also still got
Load up.
snappers, so been a good week for the knackers.
Yeah, exactly. So it could be
Nice.
one. Could be one to look at.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys. All right, so we'll keep doing some updates, shall we, on Cheltenham each week, because we're going to see some more entries obviously come in. So I'm looking forward to going there. A couple of other bits of news then before we get Stewards' Enquiry. So we've got 2 bits. El, do you want to have a quick run through those?
Yeah, sure. Probably the only other bit I'll talk about, because we'll talk about the best horse in training in a little while. But it was just some news on the Grand National. So you'll remember probably that the field was reduced last year to 34 runners, which I was devastated. In my eyes, it should be 40 runners. That's one of the features of the race, that it's unlike any other race to have that many runners. One of the things that they used to do, because obviously everyone targets the race from a year out, so you pretty much know if you're going to go. But there was often a horse would maybe just step on a stone in the morning, or just feel a bit under the weather, not eat up, and then it would come out the day before the race, and then all these horses that could have run, you're left with a space go and spare basically. So they introduced a reserve system, but then amazingly, some of the betting companies and systems like the Tote couldn't cope with the fact that a horse would be number over 40, come back into the race, and would be put into the race in the wrong position, and it would just completely mess up their systems. So they got rid of the reserve system, which I think is a good thing, as in it's a good thing to have. But now that there's actually less than 40 in the final field, there's a bit more headroom between 34 and obviously 40. So they're going to have 4 reserves, and they have up until 1 p.m. on the Friday, the day before the race, to get back
And when
in.
is the race?
It changes every year, but it's usually like the first or second weekend in April.
Okay, fine. Okay,
so,
a couple of months. All right.
Yeah,
Interesting.
a few weeks after Cheltenham.
Oh, God. You'll need a few weeks to recover. Right, Stewards' Enquiry. This is an interesting one, because last week we spoke about late cancellations due to maybe late inspections and abandonments of the racing. So, El, do you want to take us through Ludlow?
Yeah, I don't know if I'm allowed to swear, but it's a bit of a shit show, if I'm honest. Because
I mean, we have been swearing.
I think I've sworn, so don't worry.
Yeah.
okay, great.
This is not a family-friendly podcast.
Yeah. It's after the watersheds, surely. Yeah, I just think it was a joke. We were literally speaking about it last week, and you asked the fair question, well, what can be done? It's the weather. And I said, well, I think the thing that people have a problem with is all this sort of and ahhing and moving it around and trying to push it back, and then everybody gets the races, you're all ready to go, and then it's like, oh, well, no, actually, we're not going to run it. And Ludlow was particularly bad because, okay, there was a bit of frost around, but the system is so backwards because they've got the on-course clerk, who's the first man there in the morning, literally at the crack of dawn. He goes around and goes, yeah, it's fine, and that's at like 7, 8. But then you have the official BHA course inspector will come about 2 hours, 2.5 hours before the first race is due to run. He'll then have to be satisfied. So he's gone round and gone, yeah, okay, I'm happy as well. But then a few sort of people were coming in, like jockeys and trainers, whatever, and moaning. So then they said, oh, maybe we should actually have a proper inspection later on. And then in that process, they've somehow decided to push the first race. But bearing in mind, it's like the shortest time of the year, daylight-wise. We'll push the first race back by 35 minutes. And then, so we're already half an hour after the first race is supposed to take place. And the picture you'll flash up is just an absolute kind of, how many cooks do you need poking sticks in the ground?
It's like, it reminds me of when I used to play cricket, when you just get people around the ground and everyone's been like, oh yeah, should we cancel? Is it too wet? Yeah, maybe we should cancel. And then it's like, oh, whatever consensus says, let's cancel. It's like, this is a professional sport.
Yeah. That's what I mean. It's supposed to be a professional sport, and yet it's literally just like, oh, it's like a mother's meeting and a few sticks in the ground, and whoever shouts the loudest basically seems to sway the opinion. Which
so that was cancelled because the ground was too hard.
Yeah, so obviously, if you remember last week, there was quite a lot of frost around still. It was pretty cold. The problem was, in that picture, as you'll see, the grandstand obviously shades part of the course there on the home straight. So those particular areas were still a little bit frosty, apparently. But if it was fine early in the morning, according to the clerk and the BHA steward,
that's odd, isn't it? That's odd.
And obviously safety is paramount. We don't want racing to go ahead. But
call it early.
We've got call it at 7 o'clock, and nobody would have turned up. Do you know what I mean? So do better, Ludlow and others.
Do better.
Ludlow is actually one of my favourite courses. I will just say that in case I don't get let back in.
Have you seen this man? Do not let him in. It's only a matter of time. Right, let's get on to explainer of the week, how to read a race card. So for those that are watching on YouTube, you'll be able to see us do a lovely little annotation. It's almost like a school lesson, but it'll be more fun than that, hopefully. And for those obviously listening in, we'll share the pictures below the podcast, so you'll be able to see the annotated view by either myself, depending on how well this goes, or maybe Elle and Duncan can do it after again once I mess it up on the screen. So racing card, which is the most confusing piece of paper I think that I pick up. I have no idea what I'm looking at, to the point where I've been going to races many years. I thought the weight was one of these numbers and it's not, it's something else. So yeah, it'd be good to go through that. So cue my screen. Right, so you should be able to see on my screen this lovely race card. So there's 4 races. First test. There's 4 races on here. So let's start, Elle, with you. We'll go back and forth between you and Duncan. So what's the first thing you're looking at here then? Obviously, it's in Warwick. I know that much.
Am I at the right course?
Yeah, I mean, it's good to start at the beginning. So
Start from the top, guys.
Then the next thing is quite important, and we'll do a separate deep dive on how to study the form and what to look for. The ground is obviously a really key part of that, ranging from firm, good to firm, all the way down to soft and even heavy. So that will always tell you at the top of the race card, whether it be on the app or on the printed version here.
Yep.
And yeah, that's always important to know what ground you're starting on.
With what I was saying there on the good to soft bit. So for heavy ground, it normally equals there's been a shitload of rain, which has got into the ground, so it's pretty boggy.
That's a good point, actually.
That's where you get like your soft and heavy ground will come in from that. Good ground, I mean, it speaks for itself. It's been pretty nice weather. It's good racing ground for horses, so most horses will run on that. So that's just one point.
Yeah, that's good. That's good to know. Yeah.
Yeah. Then I think the next thing you're looking at, what I would look at, is the kind of distance in the class. So there's written next door to the, as you can see from the timing of it, you've got the name of the race itself, and then you've got in brackets what class of race it is. So we discussed this earlier on in terms of, is it going to be a Farmers League type race if you're a footballer, or is it a Champions League type event? This one is kind of like League 2, so like not quite Birmingham City, but getting towards.
Says Duncan, who supports a different team every week.
Here we go.
United.
So yeah, you're looking at the class of race on there, and also on the bottom right hand side of that box is the distance as well. So you've got 3 miles, 1 furlong on there. It's
also a thing they don't tell you when you go to horse racing, is then you also need to pick up this bloody furlong system, and you're always doing conversions. What is that? What is a furlong?
There's 8 furlongs in a mile.
I think that's all we need to tell them. No one needs to know.
8 furlongs in a mile. That's all I need to know.
Yeah.
Right. What are you looking at next then?
4 furlongs. Yeah. So basically those kind of initial points is like a frame of reference. What are we talking about? Where are we? What's the ground? How far are we going, and what quality of race?
Good to start with. Where are we?
Where
are we?
From outer space onto a race course, that'll help you figure out where you are. Then the other final thing, so you probably won't care about the Love Warwick Chambers or whatever it is trade name of the race, but it is important to know whether it's there's 3 types of race over jumps you'll be dealing with. You'll be dealing with a hurdle race, a chase, which is fences, or you'll be dealing with a national hunt flat race. So it's good to know what kind of obstacle, if you're jumping an obstacle, you're jumping. So hurdles are the smaller ones, and fences are the big ones that horses will jump. And the other thing you can see there is it's a handicap. So we are going to do a separate deep dive on what the handicap means. And you've said, Matt, about the weights. All the weights are here. We'll touch on the weights. But it basically means that the idea of a handicap is that it's supposed to be the better horses in that division, that class, have the higher weight, and the ones that need a bit more of a chance have the lower weight. And the theory of the process is that they should all cross the line at the same time. But of course, there are so many other factors in play that won't actually happen.
I wonder if there's ever been, and this is where we need a stat bomb. Stat bomb.
Nick everything from Taylor to Stat.
Yeah, I know. Watch out, coming in, stat bomb. Where there's actually been a race where that's happened, where they've actually crossed the line.
If you get like 4 or 5 in a finish, they call it handicapper's dream.
Okay.
It's a bit of a weird thing to say, but I don't think the
Yeah,
handicap
it is,
is
isn't it?
literally creaming his pants if that happens, but that's kind of the inference there.
Oh, what a dream. Okay. Right, moving on. What are you looking at next?
Move on. Go on, Duncan.
The other thing I'd look at so next where you can see the jockey silks. The other thing I'm looking at is
Otherwise
the
known
sort
as
of
their
form line.
colours.
So where all the colours are. If you're colourblind, it's the like the picture of the of the actual silks on the left hand side of the screen. But next to that, you've got a load of like numbers and sometimes letters as well. So that is the form that the horse has been in. So if you're reading it correctly, so the latest like run that they've had is the one on the right hand side, and then you work backwards from there. So from right to left. So the oldest run, so for example, that horse there, Slip of the Tongue, its last run was a P, and that means pulled up. So it didn't actually finish the race, as it turns out. So it's got a few of those.
And thank you for also another question on how to read that form, because that was a reminder for someone that actually goes to the races quite often. So that's good.
Yeah. I think we might. I don't know if we deep dive into it on this one, but there's different letters signifying different things. I won't touch upon it yet unless we want to, unless you want me to, Matt.
No, that's fine. Let's keep going. Yeah, let's keep going.
Yeah. Okay. So, all right, go on then. I'll let you carry on.
Go on now. What are you saying next? So you looked at the form.
Yeah. So not just the letters and numbers. Hopefully they've got more numbers than letters, because three P's.
Yeah, that's true.
That's pick up a penguin territory. That's not what you want numbers, definitely. And then when you see that little dash in between number 9 and number 8, that indicates the end of a season and the start of a new season. So that's quite important to know, because if a horse hasn't got anything in front of that dash, that means it hasn't run the season, which often means, or maybe it needs a bit of the run. If you see a slash instead of a dash, so a forward slash, that means it's had basically a year off or more. So it's more than a season. So it's not just gone from one season to the next. That's what the dash is. That's normal. A bit like the end of a football season, start the next. It's almost like missing a complete season, probably because of injury. So that indicates an even longer absence to overcome.
It is mental how much information they try and put on one page. Mental. How do you get anything done?
Yeah, right. But this is the thing, because obviously before the advent of digital technology and everything being available online, you'd have the racing paper, or if you had it in the bookies, all printed out on the sides with about 20 blokes crammed around it with magnifying glasses. For those of you that's ever been in the bookies, that's all you had to have everything there, because that was the only source of information. But it's just kept going, I suppose.
All right, that's good. That's a good explainer. So, what else are you looking at then? So you've explained the form in a lot of detail. So what next?
Yeah, so probably move across the top. So then you've obviously got the name of the horse is the biggest in bold, and that should be fairly obvious. So you know which horse to actually have a bet on.
Slip of the tongue in this scenario.
In this scenario, and then the next bold underneath, that's the trainer. So again, certain people like to follow certain trainers, like Nicky Henderson example we've talked about. And the only other one in bold there, the other name, is the jockey, which is always on the right hand side, unless you read in the Racing Post app and then they've decided to swap it round, which is really annoying. But
great. So I've just watched this video, I've mastered it, and then I turn up at Racing Post. Yeah. Okay. Nice. Cheers. Okay, that's good to know. What else are we saying then, Duncan?
I think El may have mentioned it, but the other thing is on the right hand side, so kind of across again from the jockey's name, you've got the numbers there, so like 12-0, 12-0, 11-13. So that's like the weight that the horse will be carrying on their backs. So this is all done. So the good thing is with this, it's all done in top weight down to the bottom.
Okay, so that's how they sort it. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, from top weight to bottom. So, like the handicapper will say, right, should be technically the best rated horse. So we have to put the most weight on this one to kind of, if you like, almost slow it down, and then the one at the bottom of the weight will have less. So it should obviously, they try and level peg, and they should all finish across the line at the same time, as El said. So that's the other thing you kind of look for on there.
Perfect.
That's in stone, so stone and pounds are
good
all
point.
money.
Yeah,
and that's a lot of people ask me this question. That weight is obviously a lot of it is the jockey itself. So
that's the total combined weight.
Yeah.
So they're in the saddle, right?
Yeah. So then most kind of jump jockeys will get in at around 10 stone as their minimum. Some are a bit heavier, So obviously they don't want to be doing the ones that are down at 10 if they can help it. So then to make up the extra difference, they just put pieces of lead in the saddle cloth to carry the correct weight as per the race card.
But is there anything that's weighing the horse?
No, the actual horse's weight itself.
Yeah.
So interestingly, this is a thing that's been asked for from a few kind of people in recent years. I know Kevin Blake's a big fan of this, because if you knew what weight the horse was going into a race, let's say it was his first start of the season and he was 560 kilos, then he comes down and he's won off 550 before, and then now he's 550 today, for example.
Yeah.
You want to know that information because you know that the horse is not as fat as it was, basically.
Well, yeah, exactly. Like I feel like you're scraping on the pounds and then the horse is fat or conversely really skinny. It's like, well, it's almost pointless.
We don't fat shame here, Matt.
Huh?
No fat shaming horses here. We
Sorry,
don't do that here.
lean and bulky, carrying some holiday weight. Holiday weight. Okay, that's interesting though. So that is just the jockey and saddle and any handicap weights.
Yeah, and then the next number to the left is their age. So in that one you point at there, that's 8 years old.
Yep.
That's
Well, this
9
one
years
here,
old,
which is
and
9.
so on and
Yep.
so forth.
Yep.
So at the top, if you just flick back up to the top where there's loads of little writing, sort of little mini sentences just underneath the race name.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so if you go to the very top line, it says 4-year-olds and above.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So you know that those horses have to be over 4, which is pretty standard for most
Okay.
races.
I'll do
Over
it.
jumps.
I'll do it over here.
But there's
Yeah, okay.
there's no upper limit to that.
Oh, okay. So it's a minimum requirement.
Yeah, and then as we discussed briefly earlier, once they get into double figures age-wise, the ability does start to taper off. But you see horses winning at 13 and 14. It's rare, but it does happen.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Good. That's good to know. Duncan, what were you saying? When do we start looking at the names? Which is what I use.
And colours. I think for me, I don't know, Elle, if there's anything that's screaming out from you. I mean, I think you've gone through.
Because
a
I
lot.
guess you're then getting into the rabbit hole that is the form. Then you're getting into the trainer. Then you're getting into
Yeah, there's
what
probably a
trainers and
couple
forms.
of...
I was about to say, there's one other one actually. Sorry, I picked up, Elle. I don't know if you were maybe about to say this. Again, it's really small, but next door to the actual name of the horse, there's a number there.
Oh yeah.
I'm
Let's see if I can
assuming
zoom in.
Some of them are in brackets, and I'm wondering if that is. I'm assuming. Elle, tell me if I'm wrong. That's the
No,
top
go to the
of the
left,
last
Matt.
run. No. Sorry, further left than that. So that 39,
Yeah.
for example, on that's.
Oh, this one here, this tiny one.
Yeah, I
okay.
think that is day since last run. So that's how many days ago did it last have its last run? So that does help you out, for example. So that Roquette number 8 on that card there you've got. So it's got the dash as Elle mentioned. So it hasn't basically run in the last calendar year or racing year.
Season,
It's had 579 days off the track, for example. So has he done a
Interesting.
Paul Nicholls and gone to Barbados for a long extended holiday, or has he been injured?
And then
Okay.
Yeah, an interesting point because you did pick up on the bracket. So this race that you've got here, let's take number 6, East Street.
Yep.
47 is next to his name. That's how many days since his last run over hurdles, which is
Yep.
what this race is. What
Okay.
the brackets tell you is that he has had a run since then,
Yep.
but it was over the C, which is chases, fences.
Chases.
So that means that he's been kind of going in between the two disciplines, which is something to bear in mind, that if he's been running over fences and he comes back to hurdles, it could be a bit too big.
What is the difference between hurdles and fences and chases?
Well, this is the problem with chases are run over fences. Hurdle races are run over hurdles, so it's easier
Okay.
to remember hurdles.
A
Fine.
good way of describing it, I guess, Matt, would be the screenshot that we posted earlier on, or the photo you put up earlier on with the farmers
Yep.
thing. That they're hurdles, so
Okay.
they look like literally like your fence panels you'd almost get, but they're on an
panel.
angle.
Yeah.
Whether the best way of describing like chasing fences are going to be like they look like a toothbrush upside down, almost bristly.
Yeah, like a big bush.
Yeah, exactly,
bushy
big old
beard.
hedge. That's probably a better way of describing it. Than a
Big
toothbrush.
old fucking hedge.
Can we cut that out from my description?
Basically, you know the toothbrush. Yeah. Turn it
Yeah.
around.
Yeah,
and it's-
exactly.
If you, ever
Basically,
saw, if you ever saw Sam Allardyce's moustache from the 90s, they look
Oh,
like
that's a good reference there. Good reference.
it's that.
What else have we got on here? So I think the other key thing to talk about. So we talked about the numbers and letters, which is their form. Then we have some other weird numbers and letters next to their age. So there's a few you could pick out.
Let me find the age. Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah,
9,
so-
11. Let's do this one here.
Yeah. So you see the numbers.
Louis,
So
France.
So what that section is for any headgear that the horse might be wearing.
Oh Jesus,
What?
headgear as well.
Yeah. Oh, you got to know all of this, Matt. There's a few main types. I won't go into each single one. So I was actually quizzing Laura on this the other day, and actually I've realised it's not very convenient that P stands for cheek pieces, which doesn't.
Oh, I'm sorry. If anyone's still watching this and is still in love with horse racing, you've got issues. You've got issues.
It's an anorak sport for anorak men. But the others are easier to remember. So B is for blinkers, V is for visor, and things like that. But cheek pieces is the confusing one.
It's P. What's a P1?
So that means he's wearing it for the first time, which is a new thing. They didn't used to put that in, which I quite like, because often if they wear it for the first time, they can actually spark up as a result.
Okay. What's a V9? Oh no, hold on. V9 is no, sorry. V. I don't know what it is, but 9's the age of the horse. So what's the V?
Go on, Duncan.
It's a visor. There's also
like that we see the socks like Robin, Batman and Robin over their heads. Is that a visor?
Yes. I just love the way you've described it as a sock. It's almost
I
as good as
can
my
think of the
toothbrush
name of
analogy,
it.
that is.
Yes. Maybe we shouldn't do analogies in this podcast.
The only other one I was
Okay.
going to bring up that we haven't mentioned on there is the W. So on the Raise Your Glass, number 13, on the right-hand side of that card,
Oh yeah.
I think, El, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that a wind op?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. So that's not.
We should do a deep dive on wind ops.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we might have to get an expert in.
We've had
We'll
a
get Paul Nichols in
fair
for
share.
that.
Yeah.
We'll Paul Nichols in for that. They love a wind op.
Paul Nichols looks like he's just had a wind up, to be honest.
But that's not like a piece of equipment that the horse has. That's an operation that is performed on the horse to improve their breathing, basically.
breathing operation. Which
What I've
again,
learned from
that's
owning a small part of a racehorse is, when in doubt, have a wind op.
Yeah.
When it's not winning a
If you're
race,
gonna
have
blame
a
on
wind
something
op.
for not winning, it's a wind op that it needs.
So that next to that W, there's a T. So this is a very windy horse in all respects.
Sorry.
Gassy as clay.
It's not only had its wind dealt with, but it's got a tongue tie, which means
This horse shouldn't be racing.
it needs all the help it can get, I think. So its tongue's obviously been getting in the way of its breathing. So they just put a little strap around the bottom of the mouth and the tongue just to keep it in place. But it's often for horses that aren't the best breathers. So
Okay.
have both of those things, you'd already start to be thinking, I think
Maybe
race-
not for me. Maybe I'll
Maybe
be on the Western Supermare beach for. Oh, good. All right. Well, that's clear as mud. I mean, that's really good. Very clear.
Do you want the last bit?
Go on then. Have one more.
Completely bore everyone to death.
Go on.
So the sort of italic writing underneath the bold of their actual name.
Yep.
Because people often ask me what this means. So that's the breeding of the horse.
Okay.
So I'll start in order. So the first letter, and sometimes it's two letters, that's the colour. So B stands for bay, which is what most, if you picture a horse, that's what most people picture. It's kind of like dark
chestnut
brown.
sort of.
Well,
yeah.
chestnut is actually a separate thing. That's
Oh, of course it is.
Oh, Matthew.
and then
Oh, is it chestnut CH? Probably. I would have thought.
Yeah, it's chestnut CH. B is bay, which is basically dark brown. Then you've got GR, which is grey, which even you can work out. And then the next letter is whether it's basically a male horse or a female horse.
Okay.
So M is for mare, and we all know about having a mare.
We do. I'm having a mare trying to read this.
And then, do you want to do the next two butters?
So what have we got there? So I think that's the actual breeding. So who the sire and the dam are of the horse. So who has basically been shagging in order to create this one.
So it's been shagging Linda's lad, Persian Forest.
Yeah. Yeah, so they've had a bit of a go together, and they've then created this wonderful horse.
Sorry, Linda's.
Linda's Lad is the name.
Yeah, Linda's
Sorry,
Lad.
Linda's Lad.
Yeah, and
with
Persian Forest.
Persian Forest. Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
exactly.
Okay, that's quite useful actually. I didn't know that.
We're not going to go into describing sex education now, are we?
Yeah, how does that work?
No comment.
We'll do that next week.
Ask your dad.
Actually, we'll do that next week. Cheers, guys. I think that's pretty good. I mean, it was ambitious to try and keep this down to half an hour, but I actually think it's pretty useful. So what we'll do is we'll post this on social media maybe as well and below the podcast. So go and have a look at this annotated version that I've just drawn up, and it's perfect and it's very easy to understand. So yeah, thanks, guys. That's actually pretty useful because I learned a lot.
Good times.
No worries.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Right, let's do a quick preview, quick fire. What we got? Cheltenham, you go first, Del.
Yeah, so just to talk about the day itself, it's called Festival Trials Day. We keep going on about the Cheltenham Festival. That's all we're obsessed about now. And then this is the last ever meeting at Cheltenham before the big week itself in March.
Yeah.
So it's kind of billed as a chance for, as it says, a trial, a little last prep race for the big key horses ahead of the week in March. And it comes at a good time because you've still got about six weeks left to get ready for the festival itself. I mean, there's a lot of grade twos on the card. I think the three key ones are for like the older horses. So the Cotswold Chase is basically a prep for the Gold Cup. It's not quite run over the Gold Cup course and distance, but it's pretty close. And it looks an okay field, quite a small entry stage at this point, which is a little bit disappointing. But we've got Lompresse in here, who's a horse I do like. And he's been around a bit, he's had a few injury problems along the way. But he was a good third in the King George over Christmas, and he's won at the Cheltenham Festival before, so you'd fancy him to go close. I do think Gentleman's Game is one not to underestimate. Miles Morris knows what it takes to have a Cheltenham Gold Cup winner, and he won on his second start last season. He's had a prep run, he ran well at Christmas behind the big two names, Factifile and Gallop and Deschamps, and on his second start last season he downed none other than Brave Man's Game in the Charlie Hall, and he stays all day, and I'd probably fancy him against the favourite at this stage.
Duncan, any other races?
International Hurdle was the other one, so 3 o'clock on Saturday. And I mean, we say it's not really a race to necessarily back anything in, but I mean, the potential could be there with Lossiemouth coming back to take on the fan favourite and the best horse, I think, in training at the moment. I can't even think of the horse's name now. Why have I lost it?
Constitution Hill.
That's the one. I was thinking Galloping Deschamps. I had Galloping Deschamps stuck in my head. I don't know why. Constitution Hill. They
I
obviously
was told what I said at the wedding, and I stand by it.
Yeah. They literally have just run a couple of weeks ago at Kempton, where apparently Lossiemouth wasn't herself, didn't run the race. So there's a potential that Lossiemouth could come back to Cheltenham and take on Hendo all over again for round 2. They've got the Dublin Racing Festival coming up soon, I think early next month. So whether or not we see her, I personally don't think she'll turn up there. I think she'll just go straight to, she'll stay in Ireland, but we'll see. Be nice to see the future champion hurdle winner again.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, I think you should just call out though that it's massive that Hendo's running Constitution Hill here, because Hendo gets absolutely slagged in the media because he tends to wrap his best horses up in cotton wool, and this horse has had a few issues along the way. Apparently he's never been injured, won't repeat that, but he did win well at Christmas, and Nicky Henson came straight out and said he's going to March, wouldn't even be talked into running again. But I think the owner, Michael Buckley, has had a bit of a word over a brandy or two, and I think it's great. I'll be there on Saturday, and I'm looking forward to seeing a champion return.
Incoming content.
As you say, Duncan, if Lossiemouth turns up, it's a race.
Yeah.
If she doesn't, it is a walkover.
It's a snooze.
Last race then. What you thinking, Elliot? So you'll be there, will you, Cheltenham?
Yeah.
Look out for the content, guys. Look out for the content.
I'm not sure I'm going to get interviews with commentators again, but
Come on.
we'll do our best. It's a big place, Cheltenham. I might try and sneak in the parade ring, see how far we can push it.
No, just you should probably get like a VIP pass or something now. I would have thought big time.
I've got a members badge that I'm looking after for the day, so we'll see how far that gets me.
Here we go.
But yeah, the Cleve Hurdle is basically the trial for the Stayers Hurdle at 3:35. That's probably looking like a better betting race at this stage because there's 10 entered, and that division is windy. It's a windy gantry. It's wide open. Crambo won the long walk, which was the grade 1 at Christmas time at Ascot, but he tends to have one good run a season and then falls into a hole. Strong Leader's already in that hole, so he's the second favourite. So you're kind of scrabbling around for anything. Now, I would put one up at this stage. Don't know if he's an intended runner, but he does run well at Cheltenham. Buddy won.
Yeah.
He was fourth in the Stayers Hurdle, the big division final at Cheltenham last season. And I wouldn't be surprised. He's 13-2 currently. That would be a good each way bet at this stage if you knew he was going to turn up. I wouldn't put you off him.
Although there is the other potential for Lossiemouth 2.0 to be coming out as well in that
The
race.
real Lossiemouth.
Yeah, there's actually two Lossiemouths named.
Oh.
So you've got the Willie Mullins one, which is the one that everyone pretty much knows, that won at Cheltenham last year. But you also have one that's trained by Polly Grundy, which is entered. Whether or not it will go, because I think there's another entry. They've got somewhere else, I think, later on this week. But he's also entered in there. So Lossiemouth 25-1 currently.
Oh,
He's
okay.
had one run recently after having a load of time off the track. Respectable fourth. So that could be just thrown in. I think he was a Grade 2 winner potentially previously over hurdles. So that could potentially be one at 25s to have a look at as well.
Awesome. All right, thanks, guys. Well, good luck, El. You're going there. Get lots
Yeah.
of content. That's a wrap. That's time for everything. I'm going to time us out right now. It's been an hour on the nose. Guys, thanks all for watching. Thank you for the questions we've had so far. Keep telling us what you want to see, what you want to hear, what you want to do deep dives on, because it would be great to have your thoughts. Message us at tailedoffpod@gmail.com. We're on Instagram, tailedoffpod, and then we'll probably be on X again. We'll probably get blocked, but yeah, we'll give it a go. But thanks, guys. Share with someone you like, share with your friends, your family, and please do subscribe and like. And we'll see you next week. Cheers.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
Position, and he powered the last race down. And he